Okay. All right. I'll call him up. Okay. Tony Gant. Tony Gant. Ah, thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners, and I want to thank you all for giving regular citizens an opportunity to make public comment. My name is Tony Gant, and I'm the co-executive director at Nation Outside. Nation Outside is a grassroots organization made up of formerly incarcerated people. We're pretty unique in the state of Michigan as the way we're structured from top to bottom by formerly incarcerated and justice-impacted people. We represent over 7,000 formerly incarcerated people and their family. We have 10 chapters around the state. Personally, I was incarcerated for 20 years from 1995 to 2015. When I was released, I was really optimistic and gung-ho as to what I was going to be able to accomplish. After spending that time incarcerated, what I learned very quickly about society is that we have this thing called perpetual punishment, and that the society is never going to forget the conviction for me that is 30 years old. The way that plays out in my life is I struggled, and I'm talking about struggle to get a job is an understatement. There was no one willing to let me work in 2015. Not even the temp places would get me a job. I ultimately had to go to a place that was day labor, and you showed up every day, side D, and I hope you got a job. I remember that first temp job I got. It was for 3 days. I was stoked because I got a job for 3 days. That was the first money I earned in 4 months after being home. And I was blessed because I came home to a wife. So I had somewhere to live. But she was taking care of me and our stepson and the entire household while I was struggling to get this job. So I ultimately transitioned from this temp job to a permanent job through that temp service. The company liked my work so much that they hired me. I started working in a warehouse in Lansing, and I ultimately became the warehouse supervisor after, I want to say, a year and a half. Started my own lawn care company with one push more. Just sold that last year. Started volunteering for Nation Outside in 2017 as a volunteer, and now we are a statewide organization that is growing so fast that we have people knocking down our door to become a part of it. The reason being is I got a second chance. I got a second chance. A lot of Michiganders right now are struggling to get a second chance. And if you all can take away one thing that's very important, well, two things. Housing, housing, housing. You can't keep a job if you can't get somewhere to live. You can't go to college if you can't get somewhere to live. You can't have a real second chance in Michigan if you don't have somewhere to live. Two, I have a 7-year-old. Many formerly incarcerated people that we're trying to punish by locking them out of housing and employment, that punishment ultimately goes to their children and their family. And it harms our community. We can fix this in Michigan with House Bill 4878. Nation Outside is pushing to have this bill passed. We know it's gonna help people, and it's gonna make our community safer because we'll stop locking people out and give them a real second chance for somewhere to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandolyn Morris.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandolyn Morris. Forgive me, I did not have much time to prepare. I was not planning on speaking before I arrived here. I rent a one-bedroom apartment in Grand Rapids, and I currently hold a housing choice voucher. I am formerly homeless myself. And at present, I feel trapped in my apartment complex, and it's due to the housing shortage in large part. But it's also because there are things that I feel I have no opportunity to fight against and no opportunity to escape. My rent has increased more than $300 in the past 3 years, although I've received no additional benefit for those $300. I have to pay a fee to pay my rent. I had to sign a document agreeing to pay for repairs over and above what is covered by my security deposit when I move out. And last year, I had to overpay my rent by almost $1,000 because my apartment complex did not send the increase in my rent, that paperwork, to MSHDA. I've not received a refund or any opportunity to receive that money back. In addition, I have access to funds that would allow me to move. However, I've tried to find a comparable apartment in the price range that would be covered by my voucher, and when I did so, I was told by real estate agents that they would not accept the voucher as payment for those apartments, even though that would cover them. In addition, this helplessness is psychologically enforced by we had an incident on March 25th at my apartment, whereas I exited at 6:30 in the morning and was met by a public health biohazard on my porch. There was blood everywhere. I went back inside, I checked on my neighbors, and I called 911. They told me they would send law enforcement to check the situation, and I locked myself in my apartment. 10-15 minutes later, I received a call back from dispatch informing me that earlier in the evening, or early that morning, law enforcement had been there to address an assault, and they had left this for me to wake up to, and for all of my neighbors to walk through on their way to work because it was not cleaned at 8 o'clock when I left again. So I just hope that there is some redress for some of the systems that keep us locked in untenable situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pastor Idella Williams.
Good evening. We are finally getting something done. I am Pastor Idella Williams, and I've been discriminated many times. The one time was I found a place for me that was barrier-free, and they denied me this because of my criminal history. And I told them, I said, I don't have a criminal history. They said, yes, you was cited by the city about your dogs. I said, but I was found not guilty. I never saw the fit for why they should discriminate me. And my grandson, they discriminated him, saying that he had a criminal record, that they would not rent him housing. The other thing is that I've been in my house for about 34 years, and they came in to evict me. And I said, wait a minute. They foreclosed on my home wrongfully because I paid cash for it when I first bought it. Then in 1997, they said the Army, the VA foreclosed on it, and I signed it over for $1. They said, no, there was other paper with that. I said, well, then what I signed, it said for $1, paid in hand, $1, for me to give to the VA. I said, so wasn't that sent out by my house again? They said no. that you have to pay $2,800 and $28,400. I refuse to pay. I've been paying for something that I paid for in 1987 for $34,000, and they gave me a warranty deed that said paid $34,000, but they said that real estate did it wrong. I said, well, they gave me a warranty deed. Why should I continue to pay? They said, well, that's not the way it works. So I've been discriminated and dumped on for years, and I lived there for, as I say, about 34 years. In 2010, I refused to pay anymore. So I went to legal aid, and they said they were trying to help me. But when I had to go to the appeal, they said they couldn't do anything else for me. So I've been running around and around trying to get someone to listen to me and change my outcome. Because I know God said that if I persevere, He would be in the midst. So I'm trusting that this is my opportunity to be able to get something done. I have a lot of paper that I saved from the court, so that I'll be able to have this opportunity if somebody will read it and see what I'm saying. God bless you, and thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Testing.
Shannon Tanis.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you again. I spoke before you at the first meeting in Detroit. The systematic impact here in Kent County that I've experienced is regarding foreclosure fraud. I realize that the commission, it's out of time frame for you to actually take official action upon that, but trying to get an answer to that process when it's already been deemed by the Michigan Supreme Court as unconstitutional since 1977. The MCL that I'm referring to is 600.3201, which makes certain loans, MSHDA loans, not, you have to have a judicial process, basically. You can't do a power sale on them in a traditional fashion of foreclosure that's usually done. But that's what happened to me, so my federal protections were violated. Through my advocacy, I've got the state of Michigan to start creating the avenue for more service loan providers. So that way there's not a monopoly, because the current provider that is doing it for the tri-state area is not in good standing. They were already found by the Inspector General in 2015 that they were not doing foreclosures by due process. So I've experienced a violation of my rights against the exercise of origin, the credit history required for application to a apartment or living situation. The credit aspect versus having a voucher and not having a voucher, not using that voucher as included income to raise the ability to get people into the accommodations of 2 times the rent or 3 times the rent. I've advocated for that. I've also advocated to the legal aid about not having someone to address evictions or foreclosures. So I'm grateful that they have recently hired a permanent person to do that. What I'm really also concerned about is when I find that we have board members, a part of the Affordable Housing Fund Board here in the city of Grand Rapids, that have been charged and sentenced with embezzlement, still being allowed to be a part of the official business of that board. It strikes a chord that we have no confidence in our public bodies, in their public service, because they're maladministrating and can't even uphold the rules that are already there. So when we start looking at that, there's already from the Michigan Auditor General, reports about housing across the board that have not been met, material findings that are significant. It just speaks to the value of systematic barriers that it creates for us. Also, the homeless verification letter that the rules MSHA has created currently for that letter are increasing the barriers. For someone to have to go to a business to get a typed letter on a letterhead to verify within a 48-hour time period that they're homeless is just not even in common sense. Most businesses don't even want to engage the homeless, let alone type a letter for them to verify they're homeless. So that alone, that's been allowed to be implemented and create disparaging access to resources for immediate high-risk individuals it speaks volumes on itself that we haven't corrected that oversight and transparency to eliminate those barriers. So I know that also there is a report coming out about this commission and their follow through and the lack thereof and how that also has added to it. I'm interested to see the final hearing that you're having in June regarding that report and all of this work from all the hearings to see what changes are going to be implemented to look at our public services, public bodies that are not upholding, let alone the discrimination factors with private organizations that are not upholding these things. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeff Smith.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Smith. I'm with the Grand Rapids Area Tenant Union. As an entity, as an organization, we don't have funding, we don't have an office, but we're about movement building to create tenant power in Grand Rapids. I'm a volunteer organizer with the group. Like all the other people who are working to organize, we're all volunteers. And as I said, our goal is to build tenant power because we believe that organized tenant power is necessary to combat the systemic exploitation that tenants experience from landlords and property management companies in this city. Since the beginning of the COVID pandemic in 2020, which is around the same time that our movement formed, we have worked with tenants who are facing exploitation, where landlords and property management companies who won't make repairs in a timely fashion, who force people to pay for the cost to have bed bugs exterminated, where they have to find places to live while that extermination is happening, quite often on the street or with friends or relatives in a temporary capacity. Plus, the major issue that we face, that we hear from people, is that people are facing ridiculously high rates of rental costs. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, for people to afford the average cost of rent in Grand Rapids, they need to make $25.50 an hour. There is not one person in the hundreds of people that we have worked with and have heard from who earn $25.50 an hour. Most of them make $15 an hour or less. How do you expect people to be able to afford rent, to have secure housing, when they can't make enough money to be able to do so? And almost all the new housing that's being built in Grand Rapids, even though some of it is deemed as affordability, having affordability, most of it is not for the tenants that we work with. We've also been seeing in the past few years that whenever tenants stand up for themselves, or whenever they get organized, or whenever they work directly with us, that landlords and property management companies retaliate in 3 different ways. First, tenants who stand up for their rights and are attempting to organize with other tenants in their building or in their neighborhood see their rent increased automatically. Just like other people have already said, anywhere from $100 a month to $300 a month without any prior notice. Second, landlords and property management companies will threaten to evict tenants who speak out. Now, we provide court support and eviction defense, and in most cases, tenants are able to get eviction cases overturned once the courts have actually heard what tenants are facing. But quite often, people don't even know how the eviction process works, and so they automatically try to find another place to live as soon as they get that notice, because they aren't aware of the fact that there's a whole eviction process. So you get to go to court, to have a hearing, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third way that we see that tenants are being retaliated against is when landlords decide to just sell the property because of the high cost of housing in this market, and they can make a ton of money. And this often means that people will not get their leases renewed that they've had. Sometimes people have been living there for 10, 12 years. They're forced to find a new place without almost no prior notice. So you can imagine, high cost of rent, property being sold out from under them. There's a real crisis in this city that we see and hear about on a daily basis. On Tuesday, we're having a demonstration out in front of the house of one of the landlords that we're dealing with to try to pressure them to stop this eviction process from somebody who's had their rent increased $550 in the last 3 years, even though their income has not anywhere near increased anywhere near that amount. So we urge this body to make class and income discrimination a central part of your report and recommendation to the state of Michigan. We also support the passing and adoption of HB 4878 that Mr. Gant spoke about earlier. And I just wanted to say that if there are tenants here or organizations that work on housing that want to work with us, we would be delighted. I have information, so thank you.
Thank you. Dale Freeman.
Good afternoon. I've come to speak about migrant farm worker labor housing discrimination. It's really a story of two parts. First is inadequate and unsafe housing conditions, and then the second is a lack of housing as a result of overt, covert, and inadvertent prohibitions on migrant labor housing. I want to turn the Commission's attention back to a 1968 Department of Civil Rights report on the status of migrant farm worker labor in Michigan. Back then, your office had hearings and heard reports including of a migrant camp with 300 people that had only 2 bathrooms, one for men and one for women, and only 1 shower facility in the whole camp. Migrant housing tenants reported not being allowed to receive visitors because some growers insist that the housing is on their private property and it's their right to screen visitors. Migrants were said to put up with these poor camp conditions because after traveling 1,800 miles, what choice do you have but to accept whatever is available? In response to this and other testimony, the report concluded with recommendations to amend the Labor Camp Act to at least meet federal minimums and the strict enforcement of existing laws for those employers who fail to comply with housing regulations. The Migrant Labor Housing Act has been modified since then and is much improved, but we still find instances where farm workers are being housed in unlicensed labor camps. An example from 1985 showed that the camps that a particular employer provided had holes and cracks in the floors, walls, and ceilings of the housing unit, exposed and improperly installed electrical wiring, spliced electrical cords, broken light fixtures, inadequate heating, kinked gas lines, and unsecured propane tanks. More recently, in 2013, we have examples of the more overt housing discrimination when a grower in Northwest Michigan in the village of Alberta was seeking to provide migrant labor housing. It was initially denied by the Planning Commission, and the grower appealed to the village board, who reportedly told the board member that they weren't going to allow a rhubarb to open a trash house. During a hearing in Benzie County Circuit Court, the judge said it would offend the Constitution of the state of Michigan and the United States to put a condition on that agricultural workers cannot live in apartments in the village of Alberta, especially if they are of Hispanic origin. The judge also went on to say that you can't have exclusionary zoning that says implicitly that the village considers certain kinds of workers, certain kinds of laborers, as somehow less desirable than other kinds of people who work and want to live in the village. Since then, we find examples of zoning being used to make the siting of migrant labor housing more difficult, if not impossible. Examples include Sparta Township here in Kent County, where restrictions include only being occupied between April 1st and November 1st, and setbacks from a property line or existing residence. In Mayfield Township in Lapeer County, there are requirements that the employer provide names, contact information, citizenship records, and duration of stay of inhabitants of all migrant housing.
1 minute.
And then in Sullivan Township in Muskegon, they require that migrant labor housing be destroyed after the second year of not being used. More recently, 2018, Comstock Township had examples where a flyer was circulating that had negatively urging action to stop migrant labor housing. The words included help stop the migrant bus from coming, stop the migrant camp, property values will drop significantly, hundreds of male migrant workers are coming, residents will have no control once this starts. And I bring this one to your attention because Department of Civil Rights Director Arbalou responded by ensuring that the Comstock Township Board of Trustees understood that zoning decisions could not be made based on stereotypes and personal prejudices. We thank him for his action and the action of the MDCRC board. Since then, we've had actions from the Department of Civil Rights in having hearings, and then also the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development has been trying to improve the migrant labor housing code to include investing to improve living conditions, new housing designs, siting and zoning education, and provision of broadband. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Gail Harvey. Oh, that's right. Sorry. I got these out of order. Right, I'm sorry, yeah. Got this out of order. No, that's,
I got more to say.
right. Martha Cooper.
Hello, my name's Martha Cooper. I live here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm a longtime resident of Grand Rapids. I raised my son here as a single parent back in the day, and well, he had a disability, and so I was dealing with lots of systems to see to his care. I did not come expecting to speak today, so I hope that God will help me fall out of my mouth. But I have seen many and also am experiencing and have experienced problems with housing. I've been housing an advocate for at least the last 10 years, speaking at City Hall. I've currently been housed for 15 years. It's difficult to figure out where in the story, so I was working and I was raising my son, and then my son grew up and I was still going along, and then I was in a place back in 2008 where they had 4 apartments, and I lost my apartment because they foreclosed on the building. I happen to be a painter and decorator, and as you might remember, there was a housing crisis. So anybody in housing wasn't making enough to live anything. So I spent 10 months homeless here in Grand Rapids. I don't really recall how I got through it. Around 40, I will introduce that I became an alcoholic. I had a lot of trauma, and I had depression and anxiety. And so, you know, like many, we've self-medicated ourselves into a really bad problem. And it took me quite a few turns to try to get sober. But I was grateful that I had finally, I applied for and received a HUD Section 8 certificate. So this time I stand here housed for 15 years and sober for 15 years. I was able to, because of being housed, deal with my addiction and also my mental health. And I've found ways and been gifted by the universe, God, whatever you call it, to be a contribution to my community. My son has had a lot of trouble too. During the time that I remember when I was trying to find housing with my HUD certificate, and there is no law saying that all they have to do is, no, I don't want to let you apply because I don't take HUD Section 8. So, and my income was disability at that time, and still is. So I've lived there that long, but during this time I've watched the housing crisis carry on and seeing what's happened. I had a friend who was in an apartment. She also had, I won't mention names, but she had schizophrenia and she had a disability, but she also had that HUD certificate. And how she lost her housing was having the rent raised several times until it was over the amount that HUD would pay. And so she just wound up on the street. When I found her, I tried to help her find a place, and there was an apartment building over on the northeast side for a 1-bedroom apartment. Her HUD would have covered that 1-bedroom apartment. They refused to let her apply because she didn't make 3 times the rent because she had Social Security. So she went on being homeless for quite a while after that. So I'm talking about, I understand that there are some bills now that are talking about source of income. I'm also very concerned because, frankly, there isn't enough housing for elderly people, and all of the housing that they're talking about putting in has been affordable at 80% of AMI. Well, I'm sorry, but that does not include people with fixed incomes, and nobody wants to ask or get disability, but we do deserve to live, and we are a contribution to our communities. I'm also very interested in, I forgot the bill number right off, but my son has a felony that is quite a while ago, and he has not been able to get it expunged. He's also struggling with his own alcoholism and is underhoused, but has gone through periods of homelessness. And because of that felony, I was unable to help him out because I live in HUD housing. So we've got system overlap, like he can't get the right kind of care. Co-occurring disorder, all he can get is 2 weeks at a rehab, and he's done that twice and still is trying. But we've got another system, the mental health system, and when you show up on any of these systems' doors saying, I need more specialized care, then that means you're asking them for more money. So I don't know what will become of him. I know that he is very insecure right now with housing and is having health problems that have interfered with his ability to work and pay the rent on that room. So I myself am living in the apartment where I got a $100 rent increase, but it was still just barely underneath the threshold for HUD. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know that 30% of all the women that are staying at Dégagé on a nightly basis are over 60. And to me, I just sit there and I think any day it could be me. All he has to do is raise my rent. If there's anything that I need, I'm afraid to challenge or ask my landlord for anything because I can't afford to have that rent raised. If you ask me, I hear all the time about a concept called housing choice. What I have in my life is not a choice. If I can't find a place, if I complain, or if all he has to do is raise my rent and I'm done. And I'll be staying myself at Dégagé with my mental illness, trying to stay sober. 15 years and being of help to people, real help to people, instead of being somebody that needs help. I deserve to live, and so does my son. We need more public housing, and we need supportive housing for those who are ill, and we need to erase the barriers for housing for people that are returning citizens. And I appreciate you being able to listen to me today. I'm sorry about my tears, but it's just too hard to live like this.
Thank you. Barb Williams.
I'm really happy to be able to tell my story. It happened years ago. I was young then. Starting in 1978. I was very low income. I was married. My husband was African American. I had some children. And I knew to find an apartment, I should be the one out looking for it, not him. So, anyway, I'm out with the baby. The baby's in a stroller. It's a windy day. I make sure that the blanket is covering the baby's head. I wasn't trying to smother him. I just was trying to keep the air out of his face and keep him covered. Okay. So, talking to the landlord, I'm getting somewhere. He shows me the apartment. It looks good. Looks like something we could afford and something that would work for all parties involved. Then the wind blew the blanket off the baby. And the landlord said, "Oh, he looks like an Indian. You might be happier looking at some other housing I have just around the block here. That's where I have the Vietnamese living." And these are quotes from him, okay? And later on, I found out he was an elder of a local church, another couple blocks away, and he was very sure to invite me to come to his church, and he thought I would really enjoy going there. But, okay, that was one instance. Then another instance where I had gotten an apartment on my own, without the children, without the husband, but they knew I had children and husband. And so we're moving in stuff that afternoon, and all of a sudden the landlord pulls up real fast. It's like he had just gotten out of work, and he says, "You didn't tell me that your husband's black." I kind of grinned at him and said, "Well, you didn't ask me." But even still, that would have been illegal for him to ask. And then we go to another instance of housing discrimination. Later on, I'm looking for a place with my 4-year-old disabled child, and he was in a cute little kiddie wheelchair. And the landlord kept looking at him, and he demanded to know what was wrong with him. And since I really wanted the apartment, I wanted to keep the conversation going, so I said, "Well, he is undiagnosed. We don't know what's wrong with him." And he kept asking over and over, "What's wrong with him?" Anyway, I kept saying, "I don't know." But he says, "Well, I am real concerned about this because, nowadays," well, this is way back, when AIDS was new. And he says, "They've got AIDS going around, and I don't know what he could give me." when I come over to work on this building, what kind of contagious thing that he's got going on, I wouldn't even think of renting to you. So, that was just some stories. I don't worry about that nowadays. I hadn't even thought about it for years because I was able to get a house through ICCF, lived there over 30 years. But that took all the stress. But as I look back, there was a ton of stress in my life trying to get housing, appropriate housing, and deal with people. So that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Else?
Hey everybody, thanks for listening today. My name is Jordan, and today I'm here as the landlord, employer, and neighbor. I'm here to voice my strong support for fair chance access to housing. In 2021, Ann Arbor passed a similar ordinance, and I'm here to talk about how it has impacted me and my husband, and more importantly, our jobs as landlords. The truth is, it's had zero impact on us, none at all. In 55 years of business, we have not done criminal background checks on residents. We did not do them before the ordinance, and we do not do them now. We have never experienced harm to our business or residents as a result of this, neither before nor after the ordinance passed. We feel that it is our job as landlords to reduce barriers to housing. No one deserves to be reduced to the worst thing that they have ever done. Knowing that someone has had a conviction does not tell me, as a landlord, if they will or will not be a good resident or neighbor. The numbers tell us why this matters and why this work is important, urgent. Over 1/3 of Michigan's population has some type of criminal background, and we know that formerly incarcerated people are 10 times more likely to be unhoused. 10% of children in Michigan have experienced parental incarceration, and 63% of Michigan landlords report denying tenancy because of criminal records. Those are not small numbers. As a community, we all have a duty to care for each other. We must do our part to help prevent recidivism, create welcoming communities for our neighbors, and to ensure that children have beds to sleep in at night. As landlords ourselves, we acknowledge that the criminal justice system disproportionately impacts our Black and brown neighbors and residents. We know that continuing to use metrics like criminal background checks in order to make decisions about who we rent to would perpetuate racial housing discrimination and continue to segregate our city and our county more than they already are. We have always felt that using this information to deny people access to housing is and should be considered a violation of the Fair Housing Act. Everyone deserves a fair chance. We live in a world in which it has become easy to dehumanize others, especially those with criminal convictions. I'm here today because I want a different future for my children and my family. I want a future that is led by love and community. I want a city with diverse neighbors. I want to uplift and encourage those that our society has excluded. We know that as landlords, we have power and potential to play a role in making or breaking a reentering neighbor's success. We know that by playing our part in giving folks a second chance, we can help make our communities safer and reduce crime and recidivism. The research shows us that. We know that stable housing allows people to live more safely, maintain employment, and to further education if one chooses. I'm here today to stand in community and solidarity with the large numbers of our neighbors and residents with conviction histories. I'm here to say that we are rooting for you, that we believe that you deserve fair chance access to housing. We cannot work toward racial equity and increase public safety without addressing the problematic practices that continue to uphold discrimination. I'm here today to ask everyone in this room to support Bill HB 4878, Fair Chance Access to Housing. We can't do this without you guys. We need everybody on deck. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bishop?
What can I tell you that you don't already know? These people have poured out their hearts to you. And I guess I wanted to ask you guys, what have you done lately? You know, this situation has been before us for the last 5 years. Okay, and I don't know, I feel as though if I talk and tell my story, that is just one more thing for you guys to have some PR about, or either just one more thing for you not to do about, you know. I don't see enough being done, you know. It's obvious, you know, quite a few people with disabilities are suffering. I am in the stage of terminal for cancer, okay? And so, you know, something I would like to have, how do I want to say, room for rest, okay? 2022, I was given an eviction, okay, after being at the place for 10 years because the landlord wanted to up the rent on it. Was ordered out by Kentwood Courts. And, you know, I shook the dust off my feet and I left. And again, like one of the other ladies said, you don't know the process, but then again, you don't want a landlord throwing your things out too, you know. At any rate, I went through a pulmonary embolism at that time. Was really just getting my body back together. And the mind was still split, okay? So this added more onto the plate. So at any rate, I decided to move, and family, friends helped pitch in to give a little money here and there. The landlord would not let me stay and would not even give me at least 30 days or, 60, well, at least 3 months. At any rate, one day, you know, we were working our way towards a storage. Got a storage and everything, and a friend came, helped. He was really tired one day, and it's like, how does everything just snowball on you, you know, when you're trying to do everything that you know you can do, and you're asking God to help you stand. At any rate, I took him home because he was direly tired. And next thing I know, police pulls us over, does a legal search and seizure on me under a DICE program. And they found protective equipment. Okay, I was transporting protective equipment, all my stuff, because I was homeless. Okay? At any rate, the police officer sneers at me, "Oh, we're taking you in, CCW." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" I says, "And I was just in the process of moving. You asked us and everything, where we're going, what we're and you see all this stuff here. Why come you didn't get the homeless team that you guys have, you know?" At any rate, I've been through a heck of a lot with all of this. I've got a court case that is sitting right there in the circuit court, okay? And the thing is, they're going to try to play with my life with a felony. I've been to college, okay, and I have a degree in criminal justice human services, okay, as well as a couple other different degrees. I can't work right now because of the stage 4 cancer and the complications thereof, but at any rate, where's the help? Where's the help? Because it still keeps piling on and piling on, you know. And the thing is, you get these attorneys that do not want to represent you. They want to get a conviction because it's all about money. It's about their coffers, you know. But is that fair to me? Is that fair to you as a community if you really care? It's not. It's not right. And the thing is, I've dealt with ineffective counsel 2 times with these attorneys. I'm sitting in a judge's court where she's being biased, okay? They will not even let me present my evidence of the eviction, of the storage, and of the U-Haul, okay? So you know something, the cycle goes on and on and on and on and on. And that's why I'm asking you, what have you done? What have you done? Because I would like to see where you guys are saying you're doing this is out here, but that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened, you know. And the thing is, people are, I don't even want to say the word tired. We need a new word, okay? But the thing is, this has got to be lifted, and it's got to be lifted fast. Thank you.
Thank you. Isaac DeGraff.
Good afternoon. My name is Isaac DeGraff, and I'm here representing Link Up Nonprofit Housing Corporation, which has provided affordable housing in the Grand Rapids area for the last 24 years. I am providing this testimony to bring attention to the issue of housing discrimination faced by Michiganders with criminal records. Like those before me, I'm asking the Michigan Civil Rights Commission to support House Bill 4878, the Michigan Fair Chance Access to Housing Act. We hear from rental applicants and community members that housing discrimination against those with conviction histories is a major issue in Kent County and across the state. People are being turned away from housing because of their record. We, Link Up, does not believe in discriminating on the basis of a criminal record. Each person is more than what their record shows, and landlords may be losing the opportunity to have great tenants. I believe it is our duty as landlords to provide housing for all who qualify, who cannot allow for this type of legalized discrimination to continue. Link Up is excited to support House Bill 4878, the Fair Chance Access to Housing Act, which will ensure that people with records have a fair chance at housing. We respectfully ask that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission uplift the issues of housing discrimination against those with criminal records and support the Fair Chance Access to Housing Act. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Kevin Bowman.
How y'all doing today? My name is Kevin Bowman. I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Graduated from Creston High School back in 2012. Excuse me, I ain't prepared, so I'm a little all over the place. And when we talk about fair housing, it's a broad category. First and foremost, there is no fair housing in Grand Rapids, Michigan. There'll never be fair housing in Grand Rapids, Michigan because there is no fair judicial system. There's no fair representation. The criteria for renting is not fair. Before I get more in detail with that, I can talk about some discrimination I experienced. Back in 2018, March 2018, I started renting with Link Up in a low-income apartment, subsidized. And unfortunately, it caught fire in my garage, caught fire in my unit. And moral of the story, Link Up put me out in the middle of a pandemic and a housing crisis. So I was homeless. I reached out to Salvation Army for a housing voucher, got on the list. After 3 months, they kicked me off. They said that I didn't recertify the letter. So I applied again, and when I applied again, I was on a waiting list for about 6 months, and unfortunately, I caught a case. And within catching that case, they denied my application due to the case. The same exact week after waiting for 6 months, whatever. So long story short, the case was dismissed, and don't follow my record, but I didn't have housing. So I was homeless for a little bit longer. Then I finally, that pursued me to start my own business. So then I started working for this man named Jake. He has a rental business, JW Rentals LLC. And I ended up getting employed through him, and I got housing through him as well. Working for him, I just got to seeing a lot of his properties that I was working in was a lot of my relative old homes or friends that grew up. It was just kind of weird that he had a lot of properties that was taken from people. So I ended up ending employment, and long story short, he put me out. He told me since I don't work for him no more that I gotta leave. So we started an eviction process, and he started an eviction process with the court. And long story short, he knew the judge, he knew the court administrator and all of them. So we had court systems. Went to court, and the judge told me he knew him, he knew them. And long story short, I paid the judgment, and he didn't have a rental certificate. He wasn't up to code. He didn't have a rental certificate to even rent the property out. But long story short, they put a judgment on me, and then they bicked me out. They put a background on me for disturbing the peace, came to my house for that warrant, a misdemeanor warrant, locked me up, and they bicked me out at the same time. So when I got out, I didn't have anything. So when I say there is no fair housing, because The judges are backing up a lot of these landlords with their evictions without no cause, no legal rights to even evict. So they have support with the court systems, with the police officers, and then the representation. We don't have representation. People don't know, like they said, we don't know the eviction process. We don't know many of our rights, first and foremost. So they tell us to reach out to legal aid, reach out to legal services, and they have us apply, and long story short, they don't take the case. So we didn't waste our time reaching out to them. They don't take the case, and we are left stinking at court. So a lot of us is out. There's so much, I can't even get it all out. But yeah, even when I reached out to the housing, Michigan discrimination, and they were so rude. She bluntly called back, said, "What you want?" She was a judge. She said, "What you want?" I'm like, "You calling me back?" I'm like, "This is a follow-up for discrimination that I filed." And basically, she told me, "Oh, we don't feel no discrimination was there. Go to reach out to fair housing," and that was the end of it. So, like I said, there is no fair housing in Michigan. It won't, because the criminals, we get more criminalized. It's been on the news that blacks are being stopped the most, and our criminal records is going high, starting off as traffic violations, becoming criminal charges. So we can't rent. We can't have our family members living with us because of backgrounds. We're not making 3 times the rent. We're not. We're getting kicked out of all our resources from DHS easily. All these organizations link up, Urban League getting funding for us, and they're not giving them sort of resources that they're saying that they have to us. That's it for right now. It's gonna be more.
Thank you. Clee Jackson. Ready? Okay.
Got detained. I really, just wanted to come up and welcome you all to the center, for the Center for Community Transformation. But more importantly, too, is the question that oftentimes we hear, and I've heard from folks here. It's like, what's next, right? So what are we going to do? And I understand a report and those sorts of things, but how do we litigate and legislate our way out of this issue, right? Because these issues are systemic, and I'm just sitting here listening to some of the conversation, which is really gut-wrenching, right? And so what do we do to really address these issues? And so I guess that's really the question, to go after some of these folks, to say, you will not be allowed to engage in this type of behavior, right? In order to prevent, from a public good perspective, other people from going through these things. So that's really all I had to say. And I know that's another thing I was thinking about is capacity. Do we have our agencies oftentimes? Is there the capacity to really investigate, to really address some of these issues? What does that look like as well? And again, we've been dealing with these things since, forever, since the passage of the Fair Housing Act and other things, the Civil Rights Act and all of these things. And it's like we're still here in 2024 dealing with some of these same issues. So how do we actually, how do we address these? And I really think it has to be from a legislative perspective and then from a litigation perspective, and go after some of these folks who's doing that. The other thing that I'm hearing too is I think there's a big issue around property taxes, and I think that's very predatory. I do know the state legislature has some play in that, but these counties and where you're looking at specifically this area, which is 49507, when you have folks who leave homes, parents, they transition, they pass away, and then they leave that property to an heir, and then the property taxes. And I get it. What they're saying is that, well, it's changed hands, right? But it's just, it shouldn't be changing. Property taxes should not be quadrupling. So you're paying $1,100, and all of a sudden now you have a $5,000 property tax bill, right? So it's something that's just predatory about that as well. And then the county or the city assessor's office not really sending out notices as well, and they're saying they send out notices. So I think there's something we need to really pay attention on that. And I speak from a personal level on that, because that's happened to me, that I'm dealing with right now through my legal counsel in the city to appeal this astronomical fee, and that's just summer taxes. It's not even addressing winter taxes. And I'm hearing more and more and more by people in this zip code, which is majority black, that this is happening, and they're losing their homes. And so I think that's something we have to be really paying attention and honing in on as well. So thank you all again for coming.
Thank you, Clee. So we've come to the end of the people that have signed up and are here. Is there anyone that had signed up before and arrived late and was not able to present their testimony? Someone? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Powell-May, and I apologize for arriving late. I wasn't going to speak. I was just going to sit and observe and listen, because this is the first time I've been in one of these sessions. But I'm here today wearing a few different hats. I am a local real estate broker. I have a real estate team here in Grand Rapids. I am also involved with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We have a local chapter here. I also am the executive director for a small nonprofit called 1,000 Families of Color Incorporated. So I operate in this space, and I've seen a lot, so I felt obligated to get up and tell you what I've seen. I agree with a lot of what I've heard today. I'm proud to say next month we will have served our 600th family with helping them to become homeowners, so that's quite an accomplishment. However, at the same time, I'm disheartened because we've not been able to help twice as many families because of the disparities that exist in the lending practices here in West Michigan that we've seen. Like they've mentioned, the standards that are in place by the landlords who are requiring the income requirements that they're requiring, the redlining that we are seeing, the steering that we're seeing. We're just seeing lots of things in our community that just shouldn't be at this point. Affordability has become a bit of a joke. I had a landlord call me to see if I could help her lease a 2-bedroom unit in Kentwood about maybe 5-6 months ago. I posted a Facebook post and got hundreds, literally hundreds of calls from people, some who were on Section 8, but many who were working folks who just could not find housing. And it was not like it was a $1,500 a month 2-bedroom condo, right? That these people wanted to lease. And she could only say yes to one person. So it's disheartening from my position, because we want to help everybody. But from the position that I'm in, we need to do more. So from my perspective, What I would, like Clee just mentioned, I'm interested in knowing what more can be done. We need to educate people on the processes. That's a big focal point. We really need to invest more in educating people. We need to protect our senior citizens in this community. They are losing their homes. They're selling their home to predatory people who are offering them cash well below market value. They're selling their homes, and then they're not able to afford what they think they can afford. We need to protect our seniors in this community. We need to protect the people in this community who have mental health challenges. I had this year for the first time a gentleman, wonderful man, who had been in his home, in his mother's home for years. She passed away and left the home. I am college educated with a master's degree and could not help that man navigate the homeless system in this county. It was ridiculous, the process to get him on a wait list so that he would not be homeless. He was in a home without electricity, without light, without power. It just should not be. We have too many resources in this community. So I just would encourage you all to help us to educate people so that they understand their rights when somebody tells them that they're evicted, that they understand how to navigate the process, how to protect the wealth that they've built in their families, and how to keep it and pass it on to the next generation. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. So is there anyone else that had registered? I'd also like to acknowledge Stephen Martin from State Representative Carol Glanville's office. She couldn't come, but Stephen is with her office and had brought some resources, but they're all gone now. So, and I spoke to him briefly during the break, and he said that this was really quite impactful. Thank you. Carol Glanville's district is just north of this district, so she does cover part of Grand Rapids as well. So we're here till 7, but we can finish early if no one else that had signed up will be testifying. No? Okay. So that concludes the time allotted for testimony today. For those that did not give a chance to provide testimony, or you didn't sign up and you think, I think, yes, Clee. Well, number one, it depends what the, right. Number one, it depends what the question is. And we are commissioners that are appointed by the governor, so we don't have, quote, expertise in housing issues, for example. But there are people that do have expertise in that if you have questions or comments, yes, I'll let our director say his few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mentioned earlier, my name is John Johnson. I serve as the Executive Director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. We are the operational arm of the Commission. The Commission, as indicated earlier, is an 8-member body appointed by the governor. and they're established in our Constitution. And we are charged with carrying out the mandates of the commission. I do want to mention that we appreciate the testimony that was given this afternoon. Want to call your attention once again to the June 12th summit, which the department and the commission will be sponsoring in Detroit. I recognize it's on the other side of the state, but it will address a number of the issues that were mentioned this afternoon. I think you may have a copy of the agenda, but it's all day, it's free. So we encourage you to come over if you can to be a part of the summit. But some of the issues that were addressed this afternoon that we'll be addressing at the summit will surround rental, purchasing of homes. We also will be discussing disability accommodations, home buying, and zoning, which I think was mentioned quite a bit, and disparate impact investigations, which will center around investigations related to criminal records and eviction records. So we will be addressing a number of the issues that were raised this afternoon during that summit, during our breakout sessions. So we encourage you to come out and be a part of that. The intent of the summit is to, at the end of this, is to come out with a series of policy recommendations in both the public and private sectors. From the public sector perspective, it will be our agencies. We have a number of state agencies who will be part of that, including MISHDA, DIFS, Laura, who's represented here today. We'll be talking about policies that we have and what we can do internally to perhaps reform our policies to impact housing discrimination in Michigan. That's from the executive branch perspective. Also from the legislative side, you've always been mentioned, there are a couple of bills that are pending in the legislature, one dealing with convictions, the other one dealing with source of income. So we hope to have legislators there to discuss those bills. They may be passed by then, by the way, because June 12th will be towards the end of the legislative session. I know that because they will reconvene, those bills may very well, by the time we convene on June 12th, may have already been passed by the legislature, but if not, we certainly will be discussing them. But any other legislative reforms that we feel that we need to advance, present to our legislators. That's from the public policy side. Now, from the private sector, we've heard from a number of people from the private sector, but we'll have lenders there, we'll have appraisers there, we'll have realtors there. We want all of them to examine what they do and what their policies are from an equitable perspective, so we can walk away from that summit with a series of recommendations, policy recommendations, which we intend to execute. The effort is to, at the end of that session, not only have a list of specific recommendations in each of those areas, but also to have task force that we can put together at the end of the summit and then go about the process of making sure those policy recommendations are actually implemented. So so when you ask what can we do, we know it surrounds policy. Clee mentioned it, litigation, legislation. But again, it's not just legislation, it's policies that the private sector needs to be aware of, things that they're doing that have an impact, a disparate impact on people who are trying to rent and buy homes here in Michigan. So just wanted to address that in terms of where we go from here. The purpose of this hearing was to solicit your testimony, which will be used, and we may even telecast part of it during the summit, because these stories were powerful, and we want people who come to the summit to hear what you had to say. That's why it's been recorded, and we may actually, again, show clips of it during the summit so people will know what you're experiencing, help us to decide what policies we need to discuss, list, and then enact in order to end housing discrimination in Michigan. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, the whole purpose of this, and where we intend to end up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director. People have asked me, so what's different about, what's going on here in Western Michigan that's different from the rest of the state? And I'll say, well, And after going through the summit, through the hearings today, I'll say that it's unfortunate, but there isn't anything new that I've heard. You know, everything, we have the same issues all the way across the state, and I'm willing to bet that you have a lot of the same issues up in the UP, a lot of the same issues in the rural areas. So the good thing about that, though, is that we don't need to have a bunch of different types of solutions or legislatures or regulations. It should really affect all the way across the state. So that's the good thing about having a hearing like this that we travel across the state for. So, yes.
I'm sorry, I just can't help myself, and I'm past even trying to. One of the things that I know is that nobody has to get old. And there is really such a shortage, okay, of housing that is supportive housing for the elderly. Grand Rapids is in crisis now with the elderly. We can't go out and get a better job. So I come to this, and that's why I'm saying what's going to happen, because frankly, the elderly don't have the time to wait.
Great, thank you. And I did write down protect senior citizens. So that's on my list. So, thank you.
I don't need a mic.
I just wanted to
I tried.
find out, I know the process is what you're doing, but my question is regarding the people that come here today, like this from here, and they have these issues that are going on, and you have a schedule that you're looking for, and you're gathering this information. So I'm wondering, based on some information and things that cannot wait, and things that are dire, can you convene at another time where it's more interactive, where these people can possibly get some direction for some help? Do the people here today need to actually file a complaint, talk to someone to move things forward, to help them? I mean, I'm just looking for something that can be expedited with solutions for these people who have nothing. And I did not have a moment to speak about our indigent and homeless population, but this is dire. So I'm just wondering if you all have that authority to make other meetings and interact and direct.
Okay. So the Department of Civil Rights, we only have a very limited aspect of what we do. However, there is this out in the front? I think so. There's a sheet where a lot of these issues that are not under our purview can be addressed. You can call 211 Michigan. There is a one-stop shop for state assistance resources. There's a QR code as well as a website, newmibridges.michigan.gov. So those, they can help you navigate to the right agency to address your questions or concerns. So it looks like this. So. Okay, so that concludes the time allotted for testimony today. For those of you that did not get a chance to provide testimony, you can still provide testimony, so tell your friends, tell your neighbors. You can submit via email at mcrc-comments@michigan.gov until April 30th. Yeah.
That's correct, yes.
Right. Also, please check the registration table for this flyer, again, to direct you to the resources or assistance outside the jurisdiction of the Civil Rights Department. And as the director mentioned, this testimony is being used to guide the discussions at our Civil Rights Summit in June. Ultimately, your testimony will help us to create a series of recommendations for addressing fair housing in Michigan. Please look at our website at www.michigan.gov/MDCR and our social media at MI Civil Rights for updates regarding the Civil Rights Summit and eventual housing policy recommendations. So before closing, I would like to extend my thanks and my time to my fellow commissioners or department staff in case anyone has something to share. No? No? Okay. All right. So thank you for spending the time here. I know it was a nice day and it wasn't supposed to be quite so nice. So thank you for spending the night here. Travel safely and thank you for providing your experiences. Good night.
Thank you.